Jake Miller's cargo hauler shuddered as it limped through the crowded shipping lanes toward New Bangalore Station. The warning lights on his console blinked red for the third time that day. Great. Just great. He slapped the panel with his palm and the lights flickered back to amber. The old girl was falling apart, but she was all he had. 19 years old and already 3 hours behind schedule. Jake checked the time and winced. Mrs. Patterson at the courier depot was going to chew him out again. But what could he do? This heap barely made it through hyperspace jumps anymore, and replacement parts cost more than he made in a month. He glanced at the photo taped to his dashboard. His mom, smiling despite everything, standing in front of their tiny apartment in Seattle. The medical bills kept piling up. Stage 3 kidney disease wasn't cheap, and Earth's healthcare system barely covered half of it. That's why Jake took every delivery shift he could get, even the garbage routes nobody else wanted. And boy, was this a garbage route. Humans were still the bottom feeders in galactic commerce. Been that way since first contact 20 years ago. Sure, humanity had gotten access to faster-than-light travel and joined the big cosmic community, but they weren't exactly welcomed with open arms. More like tolerated. Barely. The older alien races looked at humans the way you'd look at a kid who just learned to ride a bike without training wheels. Cute, maybe impressive for their age, but not someone you'd trust with anything important. So Jake hauled medical supplies, spare parts, and junk between stations. Low pay, long hours, and zero respect. A proximity alarm blared. Jake jerked upright, his heart hammering. A massive freight hauler cut across his lane without signaling, forcing him to swerve hard. His coffee mug flew off the armrest and splattered across the floor. "Are you kidding me?" Jake shouted at the retreating ship. Of course they didn't respond. Why would they? Probably didn't even see him. Human ships were small, cheap, and easy to ignore. The NAV system started beeping. Jake frowned at the screen. His jump coordinates were off. Way off. Instead of arriving at New Bangalore's main dock, he was being pulled toward some restricted way station he'd never heard of. He tried to override it, but the system was locked. No, no, no. Jake frantically typed commands, but nothing worked. The way station loomed ahead, a dark skeletal structure orbiting a dead brown planet. It looked ancient, covered in scarred metal and dim warning lights. His radio crackled. "Unscheduled vessel, you are entering restricted space. Proceed to docking bay 7 and await inspection." Jake had no choice. The station's tractor beam had him. 20 minutes later, he was standing in a grimy docking bay that smelled like burning ozone and something he really hoped wasn't decomposing garbage. A few alien workers glanced at him without interest. Humans were common enough these days, even if they weren't respected. Jake pulled up his delivery manifest on his handheld. 2 packages for New Bangalore. Identical boxes. One marked for the archaeology team at Dock 12. The other for some Valerian diplomat at Dock 15. He checked the bay number. 7. Perfect. Now he'd have to find someone to help him get clearance to leave, and that could take hours. Hours he didn't have. A tall figure emerged from the shadows. Jake's breath caught. The alien stood at least 8 feet tall, with purple-gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the harsh lights. 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its elongated face. Elaborate robes that probably cost more than Jake's entire ship. This was definitely somebody important. The alien's translator box chirped. "Yo, human. I am Ambassador Krell of the Valerian hegemony. Where is my shipment from Earth? I was promised delivery 6 hours ago." Jake checked his manifest again. Dock 15. Valerian diplomat. This had to be the guy. "Right here, sir." Jake grabbed one of the identical boxes and handed it over, eager to get this over with and get back on schedule. Maybe if he hurried he could still make up some time. Ambassador Krell took the box without thanks and turned away, muttering something under his breath. That's when things got weird. The alien's translator box stayed silent. Usually, those things picked up everything and converted it to whatever language you spoke. But Jake heard the raw alien words, harsh and musical at the same time, and his translator didn't make a sound. Jake felt irritation bubble up. He was tired, behind schedule, stuck at some nowhere station, and now this pompous alien was insulting him in a language his cheap translator couldn't even handle. The words just came out of his mouth. He didn't think about them. Didn't plan them. They just felt right, like a song lyric he'd known his whole life but forgotten until that exact moment. He spoke and the sounds were nothing like English. Flowing, melodic, with consonants that seemed to resonate in his chest. Ambassador Krell stopped mid-step. The alien turned slowly, all 4 eyes wide with what Jake could only describe as pure terror. That's when Jake noticed the silence. The entire docking bay had gone completely quiet. Every alien worker stood frozen. A maintenance drone hovering nearby simply stopped in midair and dropped to the deck with a clang. The loading equipment powered down with a dying whine. Jake's heart started racing. What had he done? The station speakers crackled to life, but instead of the usual announcements, a voice spoke in the same melodic language Jake had just used. Ancient. The AI itself was responding to him. And it called him something that made every alien in earshot drop whatever they were holding. Inheritor. Jake didn't know what that meant, but judging by the way Ambassador Krell stumbled backward, it was something big. Within seconds, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Bulkhead doors slammed shut. More voices and more languages, all shouting, all panicked. Jake saw security drones converging on his position from 3 different corridors. He raised his hands. Wait, I don't understand what's happening. But they weren't listening. Within minutes, Jake found himself surrounded by guards from 3 different alien governments, all shouting questions in languages his translator was suddenly working overtime to process. The only thing Jake understood clearly was that he'd somehow spoken something he shouldn't have been able to speak. Something called High Aurelian. The dead language of the Star Kings, an empire that had ruled the galaxy 10,000 years ago before mysteriously vanishing. And apparently nobody had spoken it in all that time. Until a 19-year-old human delivery boy from Seattle accidentally did, while complaining about a late shipment. The holding cell was absolute chaos. Jake sat on a cold metal bench in the middle of the room while 3 different groups of aliens screamed at each other. On his left, the Valerian delegation argued with the Kresh representatives about jurisdiction. On his right, someone from the trader guilds kept insisting they had legal rights to question him first. Nobody was listening to anybody else. Jake's head pounded. He'd been sitting here for 4 hours without food, water, or even a basic explanation of what was happening. Every time he tried to speak, someone told him to shut up. His translator earpiece was working overtime, switching between 7 different languages so fast it made him dizzy. I'm telling you for the 10th time, I don't know what I said. Jake finally shouted over the noise. I was tired and frustrated and the words just came out. They ignored him. Again. He leaned back against the wall, exhausted. His hand brushed against the smooth surface behind him, and suddenly the entire wall lit up with glowing symbols. Holographic displays burst to life all around the cell, filling the air with floating text and diagrams that looked like star charts. Everyone stopped shouting. The displays were ancient, Jake could tell that much. The technology looked nothing like the modern interfaces he was used to. But somehow, looking at them, he could almost understand what they meant. Almost. Ambassador Krell pointed at him with a shaking finger. He activated the station's Star King systems. Systems that have been dormant for 10,000 years. This is impossible. A new voice cut through the tension. Actually, it's happened before. Jake looked up to see a woman in an Earth diplomatic uniform striding into the cell. She was maybe 40, with dark skin, gray streaks in her hair, and the kind of confident walk that said she dealt with alien bureaucrats for breakfast. Her name badge read, Ambassador Lisa Thompson, Earth Colonial Services. Thank God. Another human. This young man is a human citizen, which puts him under Earth's jurisdiction, Ambassador Thompson said firmly. I'm taking custody of him immediately. If any of you want to file a complaint, you can submit it through proper diplomatic channels. The aliens erupted in protest, but Ambassador Thompson already had 2 security guards with her. Within minutes, Jake found himself hustled out of the cell and into a private conference room. The ambassador locked the door behind them. Sit, she ordered, then poured him a glass of water from a dispenser. Jake drank gratefully. Thank you. I have no idea what's going on. I do. Ambassador Thompson pulled up a chair across from him. Tell me exactly what happened before you spoke High Aurelian. High what? The language you spoke. High Aurelian. It's the dead language of the Star Kings, an ancient empire that ruled most of the galaxy about 10,000 years ago. They were incredibly advanced, more than any civilization since. Then one day they just vanished. Left behind ruins and technology nobody can operate or understand. Jake's stomach twisted. I spoke their language? How is that possible? I've never even heard of them before today. That's the question everyone wants answered. Ambassador Thompson leaned forward. You're not the first, Jake. Over the past 10 years, there have been 4 other cases of humans spontaneously speaking High Aurelian. A cargo inspector on Mars Station. A teacher in the London Arcology. A mining engineer in the asteroid belt. A teenager working at a restaurant on Titan. All dismissed as hoaxes because nobody could verify it. But this time they can? This time you activated Star King technology. That's not something you can fake. Before Jake could respond, the door opened. A group of people in research uniforms filed in, led by an insectoid alien about 5 feet tall with compound eyes and delicate manipulator arms. The creature's translator box identified it as Dr. Quilix, head of the New Bangalore Archaeological Institute. Dr. Quilix approached carefully, holding a metal case. "Mr. Miller, I apologize for the circumstances, but I need your help. This package was meant for my team. I believe you accidentally delivered it to Ambassador Krell instead." Jake recognized the box. The identical shipment. He'd grabbed the wrong one. Dr. Quilix opened the case. Inside, nestled in protective foam, were fragments of what looked like ancient stone tablets covered in intricate symbols. "These are Star King text fragments," Dr. Quilix explained. "We've been trying to translate them for 6 years. Every computer analysis has failed. Every linguistic expert has come up empty." The alien's voice held desperate hope. "Would you be willing to try?" Jake stared at the fragments. "I don't know how to read ancient alien languages." "Just touch them," Ambassador Thompson urged. "See what happens." Against his better judgment, Jake reached out and placed his fingers on the nearest fragment. The moment his skin made contact, his vision blurred. Words flooded into his mind, not like learning, but like remembering something he'd forgotten. The symbols on the fragment suddenly made perfect sense. "The seventh accord of the United Worlds," Jake read aloud, his voice steady. "In recognition that all sentient beings share fundamental rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of knowledge, we hereby establish the following protections." He kept reading. The entire room hung on every word. When he finished the fragment, Dr. Quilix's compound eyes were literally shimmering with excitement. "Incredible. Absolutely incredible. That fragment has stumped our best scholars for years." Jake pulled his hand back, feeling shaky. "How am I doing this?" Ambassador Thompson exchanged glances with Dr. Quilix, then turned back to Jake. "I have a theory. It's going to sound crazy. Crazier than speaking a dead alien language I've never studied?" "Fair point." She pulled up a holographic display showing a DNA strand. "Human DNA is unusually diverse compared to most species. We adapt quickly, advance technologically faster than we should. About 15 years ago, a researcher found anomalies in human genetic code that couldn't be explained by natural evolution." Jake felt cold. "What kind of anomalies?" "The kind that suggest human DNA was modified. Deliberately. A very long time ago." Ambassador Thompson's expression was grim. What if the Star Kings didn't completely vanish? What if they seeded their genetic material across dozens of primitive worlds, creating backup populations that could survive if the Empire fell? Populations that might one day spontaneously remember who they really were. The implications hit Jake like a freight hauler. "You're saying humans might be descended from the Star Kings?" "Not descended from," Dr. Quilix said quietly. "You might actually be Star Kings. Modified to survive regression, programmed to redevelop technology rapidly once you reached a certain threshold. Most humans would never know. But a few, under the right circumstances, might spontaneously access genetic memory." Jake thought about his mother back on Earth, struggling to pay medical bills. About himself, just a delivery boy trying to scrape together enough credits to survive. About humanity still being treated like children by the galactic community. "So what happens now?" he asked. Ambassador Thompson's communicator buzzed. She checked it and her face went pale. "Word is spreading through the galactic networks. Religious zealots who worship the Star Kings as gods just put a bounty on you. The Kresh military is demanding you be turned over for testing. And..." She paused. "Dr. Quilix, your research vessel is registered for an expedition to the Endom Vault, correct?" "Yes, we leave in 2 days." "Take him with you," Ambassador Thompson said firmly. "It's the safest place right now. A secured research vessel heading to restricted space." Jake stood up. "Wait, I can't just disappear on some expedition. I have deliveries to make. My mom needs her medication payments. I can't afford to lose this job." Dr. Quilix's translator conveyed gentle understanding. "Mr. Miller, I will personally ensure your mother receives the best medical care available. And I will pay you triple what you make as a courier. All I ask is your help accessing the Endom Vault. It may hold answers that could help your entire species." Jake wanted to refuse. Wanted to go back to his simple life of deliveries and late payments. But he thought about the words that had flowed through him when he touched those fragments. Knowledge from 10,000 years ago, preserved in his own DNA. Maybe he owed it to whoever put it there to find out why. Okay, Jake said finally. I'll help. But after this, I'm going back to my normal life. Ambassador Thompson and Dr. Quilix exchanged another look, one that said they both doubted normal was ever going to be an option again. As they left the conference room, Jake didn't notice the unmarked ships taking position in the station's outer docking ring, waiting and watching. The research vessel dropped out of hyperspace near Endem 7, and Jake pressed his face against the viewport. The moon looked dead. Just a gray rock floating in the void, pockmarked with craters and covered in what looked like ancient ice. Nothing special about it at all. Except for the massive metal structure jutting out of its surface like a buried cathedral. That's the vault. Jake breathed. Dr. Quilix stood beside him, compound eyes reflecting the distant starlight. One of 17 known Star King repositories. Expeditions have been trying to open it for 43 years. Every attempt has failed. The ship descended toward a small research camp set up near the vault's entrance. As they landed, Jake could see the scale of the thing. The entrance alone was easily 200 feet tall, covered in the same flowing symbols he'd seen on the text fragments. Around it, drilling equipment, scanning arrays, and temporary shelters dotted the barren landscape. A dozen researchers from various species stopped what they were doing to stare as Jake climbed down the boarding ramp. Word had clearly spread about the human who could speak High Aurelian. Ignore them, Dr. Quilix said quietly. Half think you're a miracle. The other half think you're a fraud. Both groups will be watching everything you do. Great. No pressure. The walk to the vault entrance took 20 minutes across the airless surface. Jake's environment suit felt bulky and uncomfortable, but the view made up for it. The vault doors were carved from some kind of dark metal that didn't reflect light properly. It seemed to absorb it, making the entrance look like a hole in reality. Dr. Quilix gestured to the symbols covering the surface. We've documented every marking, run them through every database in known space. Nothing. It's like the Star Kings used a completely different logical framework than any modern language. Jake stepped closer, his gloved hand hovering inches from the surface. The symbols seemed to shift in his peripheral vision, almost like they were moving. Probably just his imagination. What do you want me to do? He asked. Just touch it. See if it recognizes you. Jake placed his palm against the vault door. For a moment nothing happened. Then warmth spread through his glove, up his arm into his chest. The symbols blazed with golden light, so bright he had to squint. A deep rumble shook the ground beneath his feet. The massive doors began to move. Everyone stumbled backward as the entrance ground opened for the first time in 10,000 years. The sound was deafening even through the thin atmosphere. Ancient mechanisms shrieked and groaned, shaking off eons of inactivity. Dust and ice crystals billowed out in glittering clouds. When the doors finally stopped moving, they revealed a corridor stretching into absolute darkness. Dr. Quilix's voice crackled over the radio, filled with awe. In 43 years, dozens of teams, millions of credits spent, and a 19-year-old human delivery boy just opened it with a touch. Jake stared into the darkness. Should we go in? We didn't come all this way to stand at the threshold. The research team scrambled to set up portable lights and air quality monitors. Within an hour, they'd established that the interior was pressurized, breathable, and maintained at a comfortable temperature despite being abandoned for millennia. The technology required to keep a facility running unmaintained for 10,000 years was beyond anything the modern galaxy could produce. Jake was among the first group to enter. His boots echoed on floors made of the same light-absorbing material as the doors. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with alcoves containing crystalline structures that pulsed with faint inner light. Data storage, Dr. Quilix whispered. Biological computational matrices. The Star Kings stored information in crystal lattices grown from organic compounds. Exponentially more stable than any digital system. Jake approached the nearest crystal. It was beautiful, faceted like a gem about the size of his head. Without thinking, he reached out and touched it. The world exploded into light and sound. Suddenly Jake wasn't in the vault anymore. He was standing in a massive plaza under 3 suns, surrounded by beings of a dozen different species. The air smelled like flowers and ozone. Music played from somewhere, complex and mathematical. Children of various alien races ran past him, laughing. This was the Star Kings at their height. Not an empire built on conquest, but a civilization of cooperation. Scientists sharing discoveries. Artists collaborating across species barriers. Philosophers debating the nature of consciousness with beings whose thought processes were utterly alien to each other. It was beautiful. Then the vision shifted. The same plaza but empty now. The three suns were dimmer as if filtered through smoke. Buildings stood abandoned. In the distance, something dark moved across the sky, too large to comprehend, blocking out stars. Fear. Pure, overwhelming terror flooded through Jake. Not his fear, but the fear of whoever had recorded this memory. The Star Kings were afraid. Afraid of something they called the silence. Jake jerked his hand away from the crystal, gasping. He was back in the vault, with Dr. Quilix and two other researchers staring at him in concern. "What did you see?" Dr. Quilix asked urgently. "They were running from something," Jake managed. "Something called the silence. They were terrified of it." They moved deeper into the vault. Every crystal Jake touched showed him more fragments of Star King history. Their rise, their golden age, their growing dread as they detected something approaching from beyond the galaxy. Something that killed everything it touched. Finally they reached the heart of the vault. A circular chamber with a raised platform in the center. On the platform stood a single pedestal, and floating above it, a holographic projector unlike anything Jake had seen before. He stepped onto the platform. The moment his foot touched it, the projector activated. A figure materialized before him. Humanoid, but with subtle differences. Taller, more graceful, with eyes that held too much intelligence. The figure looked remarkably human though. More human than any of the other Star King species Jake had seen in the visions. The hologram spoke in High Aurelian. Jake understood every word. "If you can hear this message, then you are one of the heirs. Our children, scattered across the stars in the desperate hope that some would survive what we could not." Jake's throat went dry. "We are the Star Kings and we have failed. The silence comes and we cannot stop it. It is not a species or an empire but a process. An automated cleansing system created by an even older civilization, designed to reset the galaxy periodically and prevent any species from advancing beyond a certain threshold." The hologram's face showed deep sadness. "We tried to fight it. We failed. We tried to hide. It found us. So we made a choice. We would not let our civilization truly die. We took our genetic material and seeded it across dozens of primitive worlds, modifying it to survive long-term regression." Jake felt his knees go weak. Ambassador Thompson's theory was true. You who hear this carry our memories in your DNA. When the time is right, when you encounter our technology or sense the silence returning, those memories will begin to surface. The language will come naturally. The knowledge will feel like remembering. The hologram gestured and the air filled with star charts. "There are caches like this one scattered throughout the galaxy. Find them. Learn from them. Complete what we could not. The silence can be stopped, but only if you work together. Only if you remember who you truly are." "Wait," Jake said to the hologram. "How do we stop it? What's the plan?" But the message wasn't designed to respond. It was just a recording, left for whoever might find it 10,000 years later. The hologram faded, but not before displaying one final piece of information. Coordinates. Dozens of them showing the locations of other vaults throughout known space. And something else. A warning display showing movement at the edge of the galaxy. Faint signals matching the silence's signature. It was coming back. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the vault. Dr. Quilix's communicator crackled to life with urgent voices speaking over each other. Jake heard weapons fire in the distance. "We're under attack," Dr. Quilix said, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Kresh military forces. They've breached the research camp." "They can't do that," Jake protested. "This is a protected archaeological site. They've decided the technology here is too dangerous to leave in anyone else's hands. Especially not humans." More weapons fire. Closer now. The research team scattered, trying to find cover in the ancient corridors. Jake stood on the platform, his mind racing. The hologram had called him an heir. Said the language was a key to Star King technology. He looked around the chamber, at the walls covered in symbols that now made perfect sense to him. The words came naturally, flowing from his mouth like a song he'd always known. He spoke a command phrase, his voice echoing through the vault. The entire facility responded. Lights blazed to life throughout the complex. Defensive systems that had slumbered for 10 millennia awakened in an instant. Jake felt the vault recognize him, accept him as authorized personnel. Through the entrance corridor, he heard screams as Kresh soldiers encountered automated defenses they had no way to counter. Energy barriers activated. Containment fields trapped the invaders in place without harming them. Within minutes it was over. Dr. Quilix stared at Jake with something between awe and fear. "You just activated a Star King military installation. Do you understand what that means?" Jake understood perfectly. Every government in the galaxy would want to either control him or eliminate him. He wasn't just a delivery boy anymore. He was a walking key to the most advanced technology the galaxy had ever seen. And somewhere beyond the stars, the thing that had terrified the Star Kings into hiding was coming back. Jake's face was on every news feed in the galaxy. The footage showed him standing in the Endom Vault, golden light streaming from the walls as ancient defenses activated at his command. Within hours, he'd become the most wanted human alive. Ambassador Thompson secured passage on an unmarked freighter heading back to Earth. "It's the only safe place left," she explained as they jumped to hyperspace. "Earth's government won't hand you over, and our home system has enough military presence to make an invasion costly." Jake sat in the cargo hold, surrounded by cases of data crystals Dr. Quilix had salvaged from the vault. The insectoid researcher had insisted on coming along, claiming the discovery was too important to abandon. Now the alien worked frantically at a portable terminal, analyzing the information they'd recovered. "This changes everything we thought we knew," Dr. Quilix muttered, manipulator arms dancing across multiple screens. The Star Kings didn't fall to war or plague. They chose to dismantle their entire civilization. "Look at this." The screen showed what looked like a council meeting. Beings from dozens of species, gathered in a chamber that made Earth's United Nations headquarters look like a tool shed. They were voting on something called the Dispersal Protocol. Jake leaned closer. "What are they saying?" "They're deciding whether to abandon everything and scatter across the galaxy as primitive refugees." Dr. Quilix's translator carried notes of disbelief. "The greatest civilization in galactic history, and they chose to regress on purpose." "Because of the silence," Jake said quietly. "Yes, but there's more." Dr. Quilix pulled up genetic data. "They didn't just hide. They engineered specific worlds to carry their legacy. Worlds with primitive life that could be modified to carry Star King DNA in dormant form." The display showed a familiar blue-green planet. "Humanity isn't descended from Star Kings," Dr. Quilix continued. "Humans are Star Kings. Modified to survive regression, programmed at a genetic level to rapidly redevelop technology once you reach certain developmental milestones. Most humans will never know. The DNA stays dormant. But some, when exposed to Star King technology or when the silence approaches, will spontaneously access genetic memory." Jake thought about the words that had flowed from his mouth at the way station. The way touching the crystals felt like remembering instead of learning. "How many others are there? Other humans who can do what I do?" The data suggests the activation rate is approximately 1 in 10 million. With Earth's population of 8 billion, that means there could be 800 potential heirs. 800 people who might suddenly start speaking an ancient language and activating alien technology. Jake rubbed his temples. "Does Earth's government know about this?" "They're about to," Ambassador Thompson said, entering the cargo hold. "I just got word from home. They want you to testify before the Colonial Defense Committee as soon as we arrive." The journey to Earth took 3 days. Jake spent most of it studying the vault data with Dr. Quilix, learning about the civilization he was apparently part of. The Star Kings had been incredible. Not conquerors but cooperators. They'd solved problems humanity was still struggling with: hunger, disease, inequality between species. They'd built a society where everyone contributed according to their abilities and received according to their needs. And they'd been so terrified of the silence that they'd thrown it all away to survive. On the second day, Jake's personal communicator buzzed. His mother's face appeared on the screen, tired but smiling from her hospital bed in Seattle. "Jake? Baby, what's going on? The news is saying crazy things about you speaking alien languages and ancient vaults. Are you okay?" His throat tightened. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm coming home. How are you feeling? Don't you worry about me. Dr. Quilix's foundation already paid for my treatments. All of them, Jake. I'm scheduled for a transplant next week." Her eyes welled up. "How did you manage this?" "I took a different kind of delivery job," Jake said, managing a smile. "The pay was better." After the call ended, he sat alone in the dark cargo hold, letting himself feel the weight of everything that had happened. A week ago he'd been nobody. Just another human scraping by in a galaxy that barely noticed him. Now he carried the genetic memory of an empire that had ruled the stars. Earth appeared ahead, a blue marble against the black. Home. But coming home wasn't the relief Jake had hoped for. The Colonial Defense Committee met in a bunker deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by enough security to make Fort Knox look casual. Politicians, military officers, and scientists filled the chamber, all staring at Jake like he was either a weapon or a target. Maybe both. Mr. Miller, the committee chair began, you understand that your ability to access Star King technology represents a significant strategic asset? I'm not an asset, Jake said flatly. I'm a person. A person who can unlock vaults containing technology that could shift the balance of galactic power, a military general interjected. We need to study you, understand how this genetic activation works. If we could replicate it, trigger it in other humans? Absolutely not, Ambassador Thompson cut in. You're talking about genetic experimentation on human citizens. That's explicitly illegal under the Colonial Charter. The argument raged for hours. Some wanted to use Jake to access every Star King vault they could find and weaponize the technology. Others wanted to keep him hidden, afraid that flaunting a Star King heir would make Earth a target. A few even suggested limiting the information to prevent panic. Jake listened to them debate his future like he wasn't even there. Finally, he'd had enough. The silence is coming back, he said loudly, standing up. The room fell silent. That's what nobody wants to talk about. The Star Kings didn't hide because they were cowards. They hid because something was hunting them. Something that wipes out advanced civilizations. And according to the vault data, it's already entered our galaxy. He pulled up the sensor readings on the main display. Long-range telemetry from monitoring stations at the galactic rim, showing anomalies that matched the silence's signature. Dark zones spreading slowly inward, where all transmissions simply stopped. 3 systems have gone completely silent in the past month, Jake continued. No distress calls. No evacuation attempts. Just silence. That's not a coincidence. That's the silence, doing what it was designed to do 10,000 years ago. Reset the galaxy. Kill anything that gets too advanced. The committee members stared at the data in horrified silence. Dr. Quilic stepped forward. The Star Kings left vaults and heirs for a reason. They couldn't defeat the silence, but they believed future generations might find a way. Mr. Miller is not a weapon to be exploited. He's a key to understanding our only chance of survival. That night, Jake stood on the balcony of a safe house in the Swiss Alps, staring up at stars he couldn't name. His communicator buzzed with incoming messages. Reports of other humans spontaneously speaking High Aurelian. A construction worker in Detroit who'd activated ancient machinery buried beneath the city. A student in Mumbai who'd started having visions of the Star King Empire. A fisherman in Alaska who'd found a vault entrance beneath melting permafrost. The activation was spreading. Whether because of Jake's actions or because the silence was getting closer, more heirs were awakening. Ambassador Thompson joined him on the balcony. The committee reached a decision. They're authorizing an expedition to locate and activate as many vaults as possible. They want you to lead it. Me? I'm just a delivery boy. You're the only heir we have who's already activated a major vault. The others are confused, scared. They need someone who understands what's happening. She paused. The Star Kings left their memories in your DNA for a reason, Jake. Maybe it's time to remember why. Jake looked up at the stars, where somewhere in the dark between galaxies, the silence was coming. Coming to finish what it had started 10,000 years ago. Except this time the Star King's children were still alive. Scattered and dormant, but alive. And maybe, just maybe, they could do what their ancestors couldn't. Okay, Jake said quietly. Let's find the other heirs. Let's open the vaults. And let's figure out how to stop something that terrified the most advanced civilization in history. Because the alternative was watching everything humanity had built, everything the Star Kings had sacrificed to preserve, get swallowed by silence. And Jake Miller, 19-year-old delivery boy from Seattle, wasn't about to let that happen without a fight. Finding the other heirs took 3 weeks. Jake traveled across human space in a borrowed military transport, tracking down people whose lives had suddenly gone sideways just like his. First was Kelly, a mining engineer from the asteroid belt who'd accidentally activated ancient machinery while drilling and nearly caused a station-wide evacuation. She was tough, practical, and deeply annoyed that her DNA had decided to wake up at the worst possible time. Then came Ryan from Chicago, a warehouse worker who'd started having dreams in High Aurelian and thought he was losing his mind until Jake showed up. Beth was a marine biologist from the Pacific Research Station who'd discovered a vault entrance 2 miles underwater and had been too terrified to tell anyone until now. Tommy worked construction on Mars and had spent 2 days in psychiatric evaluation after he'd started arguing with building materials in a language that made automated systems obey him. There was Jennifer, a university student from Sydney who'd been studying ancient human languages when Star King memories started bleeding through, making her final exam somewhat awkward. David ran a small grocery store in rural Montana and had honestly thought he was being possessed by aliens before Jake explained what was really happening. And finally Amy, a teenager from a farming station orbiting Jupiter who'd activated her colony's emergency systems by accident, and whose parents were still not entirely convinced she wasn't playing an elaborate prank. 8 heirs total including Jake. 8 ordinary people who carried extraordinary memories in their DNA. They gathered on a research vessel provided by Earth's Colonial Defense Force. The meeting room was tense. Most of them had been pulled from their lives without warning, told they were part of some ancient alien legacy, and now expected to save the galaxy from an existential threat. "This is insane," Kelly said, arms crossed. 2 weeks ago I was worried about quotas and safety inspections. Now you're telling me I'm supposed to help fight something that destroyed the most advanced civilization in history? "I know how you feel," Jake said. "I was delivering packages. But we don't get to choose this. The silence is coming whether we're ready or not." Dr. Quilix pulled up displays showing the latest sensor data. The dark zones were spreading faster now. 5 more systems had gone silent in the past week. Whatever the silence was, it was accelerating. "The vault data indicates a final Star King facility," Dr. Quilix explained. "Hidden inside an artificial star at the galaxy's core. The coordinates are there, but the location is heavily restricted. No ship has been permitted in that region for thousands of years." "Why not?" Ryan asked. "Because it's unstable. The star is a manufactured structure, and nobody knows what happens if it fails. But according to the Star King records, this facility contains something called the resonance array. A weapon or possibly a communication device, designed specifically to counter the silence." Jake studied the coordinates and something in his genetic memory stirred. He could almost see it. A massive structure floating in the heart of a star, powered by fusion itself. The Star King's last desperate project, abandoned when they ran out of time. "It was never completed," he said quietly. "They were still building it when they decided to scatter." "Can we finish it?" Beth asked. "That's what we're going to find out." The journey to the galactic core took 2 weeks aboard the fastest ship Earth could provide. A full military escort accompanied them, along with representatives from a dozen other galactic governments. The silence wasn't just humanity's problem anymore. 3 major alien civilizations had lost colonies to the spreading dark zones. Everyone was desperate enough to try anything, even trusting a group of human kids with ancient technology they barely understood. The artificial star was breathtaking. It hung in space like a trapped sun, held in place by structures so massive they bent light around them. Jake had seen wonders in the vault memories, but this was something else. This was the Star Kings at their absolute peak, reshaping reality itself. "How do we get inside?" Amy asked, staring at the display in awe. Jake closed his eyes, letting the genetic memories surface. "There's an entrance. A pathway through the stellar material. The star itself is a shell protecting what's inside." He guided their ship through the approach sequence, speaking commands in High Aurelian that made the vessel's systems respond in ways the engineers hadn't thought possible. The star's surface parted before them, revealing a tunnel of stabilized plasma leading to the structure at its heart. The resonance array was enormous. Crystalline towers arranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly, all connected by bridges of solid light. It was beautiful and terrifying, a weapon that could reach across the galaxy. The other heirs felt it too. Jake could see it in their faces, the same pull he felt. This place was calling to them. Dr. Quilix's team set up scanning equipment while the heirs explored the facility. Every surface responded to their touch, systems awakening after 10,000 years of sleep. The array was mostly complete, but crucial components were missing. The Star Kings had run out of time before they could finish. "We need to complete the connection matrix," Jake said, reading symbols that flowed past his vision. "The array needs a control system, something to guide the broadcast." "What kind of broadcast?" Kelly asked. Dr. Quilix pulled up the technical specifications, mandibles clicking nervously. "It's designed to emit a resonance pattern that disrupts the silence's operational frequencies. But there's a problem. The final component requires a conscious mind to serve as the control interface. Someone would need to upload themselves permanently into the system." The room went silent. "You mean someone has to die?" Tommy said flatly. "Not exactly. Their consciousness would continue, merged with the array. But they could never leave. Never return to a physical body." Jake stared at the interface port, feeling the weight of that choice. He thought about his mother recovering from her transplant surgery back on Earth. About the simple life he'd had just a month ago, delivering packages and worrying about rent. His communicator buzzed. A message from Ambassador Thompson. The silence had reached the outer colonies. Millions of people just gone. No time left for debate or second-guessing. There has to be another way, Ryan protested. We can't ask someone to give up their life. But Jake was remembering something from the vault data. The Star Kings had tried this approach. They'd assumed one mind would be enough to control the array. It had failed. Not because the technology was wrong, but because one consciousness, no matter how advanced, couldn't process the complexity required. Wait, he said suddenly. The Star Kings failed because they thought small. One mind controlling everything. But what if we don't need one mind? What if we need millions? He turned to the others, ideas flowing faster than he could speak them. There are 800 potential heirs on Earth. 8 billion humans total carrying Star King DNA. What if we don't upload one person? What if we use the array to connect to all of them? Not full consciousness, just the instinct, the genetic memory. Create a distributed network like the Star Kings never imagined. Dr. Quilix's eyes widened. A collective unconscious. Using the latent DNA across your entire species. That's brilliant. That might actually work. They worked frantically, reconfiguring the array for broadcast instead of upload. The military escort reported that silence forces were entering the system. Massive structures, dark and incomprehensible, leaving dead space in their wake. The Allied fleet engaged, buying time. Ships blinked out of existence as the silence swept through them. Jake could hear the desperate radio chatter as captains realized their weapons meant nothing. We're ready, Dr. Quilix announced. But I should warn you, we don't know what activating the entire human species' genetic memory will do. There could be side effects. Do it, Jake said. He placed his hands on the control interface. The other 7 heirs joined him, adding their genetic patterns to the broadcast. The array recognized them, accepted them, and began to pulse with power drawn from the artificial star itself. Jake felt the broadcast reach out across light years in an instant. Touching Earth. Touching every human colony, every ship, every person carrying Star King DNA. Not overwhelming them, not changing who they were, but awakening something that had slept for 10,000 years. Billions of minds touched the array simultaneously. Not full consciousness, just instinct and genetic memory. A distributed network spanning an entire species, working together in ways they'd never consciously planned. The resonance broadcast erupted from the array. Jake felt it wash over the silence forces. The massive structures shuddered, their movements becoming erratic. The broadcast wasn't destroying them, it was reprogramming them. Sending them new instructions. Redirecting them back to the void beyond the galaxy, back to dormancy. The silence retreated. Slowly at first, then faster, the dark structures withdrew from the systems they'd invaded. The dead zones began receiving transmissions again, though the colonies there were gone, lost to the initial wave. But the advance stopped. The silence was leaving. Jake collapsed, exhausted. Around him, the other heirs were equally drained. But they'd done it. 8 ordinary people with extraordinary DNA had completed what the Star Kings couldn't. The broadcast remained active, a permanent network connecting humanity's genetic memory to the array. Not controlling people, not changing them, but giving them access to instinct and knowledge when needed. Every human could now touch that ancient legacy if they chose. 3 months later, Jake stood in line at the courier depot in Seattle. His old boss was interviewing him for his job back. You disappeared for weeks, Miller? No notice, nothing. Why should I rehire you? Jake shrugged. I had a family emergency. It's handled now. He got the job back. Minimum wage, terrible hours, hauling cargo between stations just like before. But something had changed. Other couriers, other workers, they looked at each other differently now. Everyone had felt the broadcast, that moment of connection to something larger. Humans weren't seen as primitive newcomers anymore. The galaxy recognized them as the heirs who'd saved civilization. The vaults opened freely to any human who approached them. Ambassador Thompson was leading initiatives to share Star King knowledge carefully with other species, building the kind of cooperation the ancient empire had valued. Jake made a delivery to the new archaeological institute being built outside Seattle. Humans and aliens working side by side, studying their shared past. His package contained books, human literature being translated into High Aurelian for the archives. As he walked back to his ship, he felt the faint presence of the array at the back of his mind. Always there, always watching. Ready if the silence ever returned. His communicator buzzed. His mother calling to remind him about dinner. Just finished a delivery, Mom, he said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Drive safe, sweetie. Jake looked up at the sky, where ancient satellites kept silent watch. The Star Kings were gone, but their children remained. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as partners in something bigger than any one species. The legacy lived on. Not in empires or weapons, but in cooperation and shared knowledge, in ordinary people doing extraordinary things when it mattered most. Jake Miller climbed into his cargo hauler and headed home, just another delivery boy in a galaxy that would never quite be the same.